Okay, this afternoon we're doing a home interview at the home of Mr. Stiling Knight, who's a resident of Hewlett's Landing. And it is 16 July 2008. And the interviewer is Wayne Clark. Mr. Hewlett, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth, please?
Mr. Knight, could I ask Ray to name is Stiling?
Okay.
And I'm a resident. My home is Hewlett's Landing, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And
Your date and place of birth?
I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts, August 28, 1926.
Okay, did you attend school there?
No. I attended school in a one-room schoolhouse here in Hewlett's Landing, in Dresden, the town of Dresden, and went to school at Whitehall, New York for high school.
And what year did you graduate?
1938, I believe.
Okay. And did you go on to college at that point?
No, I went into the Army.
Okay.
Soon after.
All right. Do you remember where you were and when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was in Whitehall, New York.
Mm-hmm.
I lived with my family in that place, in Whitehall, when I first heard about Pearl Harbor. And I worked at the Watervliet Arsenal in Watervliet before I went in the Army, where I joined the Army, and I went to meet, so that's where I was when I joined the Army. I went to
Okay.
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
What year did you join the Army?
It was in August 1944.
Okay. Now, did you enlist or were you drafted?
Yes, I was a volunteer.
Okay. All right. And you went to Fort Dix, New Jersey for your basic?
Yes, and the basic was in Camp Robinson, Arkansas.
Okay.
Immediately when I reported at Fort Dix, and everything moved rather rapidly then. Next thing we knew, we were on the Aquitania sailing for Europe.
Okay. Going back to basic training, were you there for 8 weeks, 12 weeks?
It was 12 weeks.
Okay. And did they give you an infantry basic training? Or?
Infantry basic training. It was a shortened schedule because they were anxious to get us moving.
Okay, so you didn't go on to another Army school after
No.
basic?
I did.
Okay. Okay. And then you were shipped overseas?
After the basic, we went directly.
Okay, and you mentioned the Mauritania?
The Aquitania.
Aquitania,
It was
okay.
a 4-stack steamship.
Okay.
And
How was that? Did you go over in a convoy, or was it a single ship?
that's a very good question. We were all by ourselves. The last thing we saw was a PBY as we left New York, flying over us, and then it's a very fast ship.
Mm-hmm.
Unescorted ship, and 5 days later we were in Glasgow, Scotland.
Okay, did you get seasick at all?
No.
No?
I loved to stand on deck and enjoyed it.
Okay. And once you got to Glasgow, Scotland, how long were you there for?
Just a few hours. We were on the train immediately from the dock to Southampton, England, overnight.
Okay.
And then on a ship loaded in Southampton, and the next thing we knew, I heard the tremendous racket. It was dropping the anchor Southampton before that evening.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I thought, well, now I can go to sleep. We're anchored here in Southampton. And then, so I went to sleep. And the next morning I woke up, it was very quiet, went upstairs, and I saw the 2 destroyers, one on either side. Everything was very quiet, very misty, nothing was moving.
Mm-hmm.
And gradually, nothing happened. I knew the Germans had fast TV patrol torpedo boats, and there were submarines, but nothing happened. We were in Le Havre.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, quickly to the Rebel depot outside Le Havre. And just a matter of a few days after that, we were reporting for duty.
Now, what unit did they put you in?
The trucks came to pick us up at the Repa Depot, was the 4th Division trucks,
Mm-hmm.
and I was immediately assigned to the 4th Division. Infantry.
Infantry. Okay. And do you remember the approximate date at that point? It was obviously 1944,
It was in February.
February.
Snowing a little, but it was February.
Okay. All right. Once you reported to the division, what did you do next? Were you put into an infantry company or platoon?
Yes, we were assigned to where we are in the company. It was Fox Company, and the captain and assigned us to the platoon. I forget which platoon, but we were assigned
Mm-hmm.
where we would be in the company.
And this was in France.
Yes, it was a respite for the company. A few days they were there in a quiet farming village,
Mhm.
and that's when we were assigned.
Okay. And from there, did you go out on patrols?
No, from there, the next day we were put on the truck again and immediately jumped to the front line.
Okay.
And
When was the first time you were under fire?
that was it. I remember going off the back of the truck, and the first thing I saw was a soldier on the ground. I didn't look at it. I saw the boots were the same as mine. But we swung around, the sergeant showed us where to line up, take the foxholes, and there was a tank in continual fire towards the road leading into the woods. I don't know where they got that much machine gun fire from. The tank was used it up, and it was continuing on for about an hour while we were just lining up and getting into the foxholes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that for the day. That night I remember one of the things that I was asked is about if I did anything unusual. I could mention now. That night I did help the medics carry a few wounded back through the headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
4, I think.
Now, was your clothing adequate? Did you have rubber boots and
We had
winter equipment?
everything adequate. It
Mhm.
was adequate for the time because it was in February, but it wasn't that cold.
Okay. And what kind of weapon were you issued?
I had the Browning automatic rifle. I was asked to be on that team. Brady Carol was with me, but I carried the rifle, and that was my assignment in the squad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
What did you think of the BAR?
it's a wonderful rifle, a little heavy, quite heavy. I carried it on its side because there's a magazine, and it's easily distinguishable, so I carried it on its side. We dropped off the bipod, and the flash hider was about this long, which doesn't do anything. I left on the end of the rifle to make it little, well, as long as a regular M1. It looked like, from a distance,
Mhm.
it would look like a regular M1.
Mm-hmm.
So I carried, couldn't see the magazine if I carried it on the side. It was a little awkward, but that way I was indistinguishable from the others in the squad.
So as a BAR man, do you think the enemy would single you out as a target?
Yes, because they can see the large magazine and the shorter rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And but that was a good way to. I tried to keep myself. We were out in the open at times, but it was a good way to sort of remain look like everybody else.
Okay.
It was a very good rifle.
All right. And did you participate in the Battle of the Bulge?
Yes, it was the Bulge had been going on for quite a while. We joined in February,
Mm-hmm.
and it was active because the procedure Eisenhower had developed was to keep constant pressure on them and it was there at the Battle of the Bulge. It was just constant pressure over a 300-mile front or a 200-mile front, and it was good strategy, and I'm sure Eisenhower liked that idea, wanted that idea. So the participation was in the latter stages of the Battle of the Bulge, because I joined the outfit, actually got along with everybody. Whether we'd been there a week before me, or a month before me, or many of the people in the company had been there on D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
Not many were gone. That's why we were a replacement. And but we all got along fine, no matter when we arrived on the scene.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a problem with frostbite at all?
No.
Okay. All right. And did your unit suffer many casualties? You had mentioned
Yes,
carrying wounded out earlier.
Yes, but we didn't have any account. The headquarters or the medics knew about casualties. We didn't know too much about the casualties because we were moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd hear about it later that somebody who had been there D-Day was no longer with us. Tech sergeant, fine man, but at any time it can happen. So there were casualties.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to believe that somebody that's been there that long, even though the war was drawing to a close.
Mm-hmm.
Any time is our time.
Yeah. Where did you go after that?
We went, of course we were in France at the time, went to Belgium, and as I understand it, we were in Luxembourg for a short while. I remember Alsace,
Mm-hmm.
and then Germany, and then as things got a little quieter, we were going south, to where I went through Munich.
Uh-huh.
It had been cleared at that time, because I found out later that there was a German mobilization of say 300,000 or 400,000 in that area, south of Munich, around Munich, in Bavaria. I didn't know that till later. That's probably why we were headed in that direction.
Were you aware of any of the concentration camps?
No.
Okay.
Never saw anything.
Okay. And you basically just kept moving.
I should mention, when you mentioned concentration camp, I remember our outfit, the 4th Division, when we got near the Austrian border, captured Hermann Göring. Saw him, very ugly looking person.
Oh, you actually saw him?
The outfit actually saw him. Yeah, he was, I learned later that he had gone south, thinking of organizing something in the south, because he knew Hitler had 300,000 or 400,000 men he was organizing in the south. So evidently that was part of his thoughts. But he ended up deciding to surrender to our unit.
Okay, and this was towards the end of the war when that happened.
This was down to the Austrian border towards the end of the war.
Okay. Now, where were you? Do you remember about the death of President Roosevelt, where you were at the time? Or?
At the time, we heard about it almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone felt saddened about that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know at the time that I should say, you mentioned Roosevelt, I should mention, I found out afterwards that he had not allowed, I didn't know it at the time, we all felt bad about losing the president, but I found out later that he had not allowed the British to replace General Eisenhower as the commander of all the Allied forces. I didn't know that until later. And I'm grateful to President Roosevelt at the time for having done that. I think he had in mind Eisenhower's strategy of constant pressure on the Germans over a wide front. None of this bayonet charges and things like that. That was a salient feature perhaps of the First World War, but not of the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
And the British, had they accomplished, and they came close to accomplishing, replacing Eisenhower, because Eisenhower had reluctantly thought he had to go. If it had happened, it would have been a terrible tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
The war would have been prolonged a year or two at least, because the British had in mind this idea of driving a drive on Berlin, which would have prolonged the war a year or two, tremendous casualties, American as well as everyone else, because the Germans had many elite divisions held in reserve, and it would never succeeded, and a terrible failure.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, President Roosevelt would not allow the British to replace General Eisenhower. And
Did you ever see Eisenhower or any of the other generals?
no, I didn't, because I wasn't in Paris at the time. He went through Paris, but Luke and a few of the other boys in our company had seen him, and they called out to him. He responded, of course.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't with the outfit in Paris at the time. I was a replacement later.
Mm-hmm. What was it like when you heard that Germany surrendered? Was there a lot of celebration,
No.
or were you apprehensive?
I heard it on a recon car. I heard someone told me that they had didn't know about the actual surrender date. The first I knew was that Hitler was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, didn't surprise me too much. I found out that he was sort of in very bad health. I think he was in the third stage of syphilis, actually, and his judgment wasn't right, but he still had the tremendous willpower to do what he wanted to do. And I remember a little boy in the field coming towards me sometime because things were quiet, and this boy said, "Heil Hitler," and I said, "Hitler's totist." I just heard that Hitler was dead. That surprised him.
Mm-hmm.
But the little boy said, "Heil Hitler" to me. I can say that. Everybody had in mind.
Did you get to see any USO shows at all?
No,
Nothing like that.
nothing.
Okay, and now you actually went into Germany.
Yes.
Okay, and how were you treated by the civilian population?
Very well.
Okay,
Very well.
were you
They
involved?
sort of stared at us for a while, but then no problems.
Were you involved in any of the occupation?
Yes, we were in the occupation for a while,
Mm-hmm.
only because they were getting the boats ready to ship us out because we were scheduled to come home on a month's furlough in August.
Mm-hmm.
I was on furlough when the atomic bomb was dropped.
Oh, okay.
So we were scheduled to land at the northern part of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
That was our plan for our division.
Okay, going back a little bit, did you ever encounter the Russians at all?
No,
No?
no.
Okay. All right. Now, what did you think when you heard about the dropping of the atomic bomb? Did you find that sort of unbelievable that a bomb could do that much damage?
Yes, but at the time it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't shocked. It was actually that I had heard many years before in Whitehall. Someone had mentioned that there was such a thing as a terrible bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it shouldn't have been talked about. It took 4 years to develop a bomb, and no one knew, working on it, that they would be able to develop a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was all very secret. And yet I had heard someone say in Whitehall, talking to Williams, who was the drugstore proprietor at the time, that there was a terribly big bomb that they had taken away and they dropped it in the Atlantic Ocean, and it was too dangerous to have. Somebody had said something or heard something, and they should not have heard it.
Mm-hmm.
And they certainly shouldn't have said anything. But I think it was related to that situation. But my reaction at the time was just interest in the fact that I thought it would be effective in bringing about the end of the war. I could mention that I found out later that the Japanese military had no intention of letting the fact that all these people were vaporized have anything to do with their intention of continuing the war. The Japanese emperor had decided to accept Truman's agreement from Potsdam and surrender. And that tape, an attempt was made to recover that tape by a military group that had raided the palace of the emperor. because they did not want to end the war
Mhm.
after the atomic bomb. And that's not talked about much, but it was true. They tried to go against the emperor's wishes because the military was in control, and they kept, even though the situation was devastating, they intended to fight to the last man. That's why it's very good that our plan to send American soldiers into Japan, invade Japan, would have been just tremendous casualties for the American soldiers, because no one would have surrendered. Japanese would never surrender.
Now, were you ever wounded at all or injured?
No. Injured only with the chicken wire on a tank. It was like a tank. It was a self-propelled 90mm, called them TDs, tank destroyers. Very much like a tank, which we rode half a day. I didn't like that because they attracted the fire. One thing a tanks do is it draws fire, but the chicken wire was used for camouflage. But there wasn't much camouflage, but bloody chicken wire. I got a few scratches on that. I was glad to leave it. Actually, afterwards. But other than that, no injuries, no.
Okay. And where and when were you discharged?
At Fort Benning in Georgia. I think it was December 1946.
Okay. And that was over a year after the war had ended?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I hadn't been in service long enough.
Okay. Did you do any duty stateside once you came back from Europe?
Yes, I was assigned a different outfit. The outfit was breaking up, and I was at one time with a tank company in Georgia. That's when
Okay.
I found out that, and it was interesting to see the tanks. It was a good place for them.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do there in Georgia, being an infantryman?
Not really much. It was the time when you were just assigned here and there. I was in the infantry, but they assigned me to that, and I didn't object.
Okay. And once you were discharged, did you make use of the GI Bill?
Yes. I'm grateful for the GI Bill. I was able to go to college, and it more than helped, because I didn't have enough at the time for college. I went to Columbia, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Columbia. And it was hard work.
And what did you do for a job or a career?
I worked as a research laboratory in Bayonne, New Jersey, edible oils company, Best Foods. And I was there for many years. 20, I think. About 20, almost 20.
Okay. And did you stay in contact with anyone you were in service with?
No, I didn't. And I've often thought of them, but we just all went home. And we didn't think at the time we should make sure we had each other's addresses and phone numbers. We were just glad to leave the Army. We got along fine when we were there, but it was just something we did.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
Veterans of Foreign Wars in Glens Falls.
Okay. All right. So you probably never attended any sort of reunions for your division?
No.
Okay. How do you think your time in service changed or affected your life?
Made you glad to be alive. Enjoy every day. Every day it's we all never know. It's part of our religion that we don't know. Could be any day. And
do you think you would have gone on to college if it hadn't have been for the GI Bill?
I would have found some place, I think, because I believe education is very important, and a great deal we have to do ourselves. And it helped money-wise to have the GI Bill. I think many Americans can say that. It was a great visionary thing for Congress to do.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think I may have already mentioned how grateful I am to Roosevelt for not allowing the British to remove Eisenhower from command, because it would have been a terrible. Brady Carol was, I think I mentioned, my constant companion. We slept 1 hour each in a foxhole together. Hard to believe an hour had gone by, but we'd wake each other up and do our own guard duty.
Do you know if he survived the war?
Oh yes, he was. I was there when he was discharged, actually.
Okay.
Went back to West Virginia. And there's something you mentioned that I jotted down. I mentioned that what was the funniest thing that happened to you, and that reminded me of the fact we were approaching a small town, and the man came beside me. One of the soldiers, wasn't in our squad, came beside me and said, "Is that an artillery observer over there lying down on his stomach?" I was on all fours at the time, trying to keep my rifle from out of the dirt. I said, "Yeah, I think so." About that time, a tank was moving over on the right, and I thought his gun exploded in front of me. It wasn't that; it was a rifle, a sniper fire from the little village. It hit the gas chamber on the M1 rifle. It's part of it's under the muzzle of an M1, but it's not made of the same material. It's nothing but a chamber. But so it had hit that on his rifle. I thought it exploded in front of me, and quite a bang. And we all kidded him afterwards. You got to take better care of his rifle to help defend himself, because it was completely destroyed the rifle. But I'm amazed at the fact that at that distance they could be that accurate with their rifles.
All right, well, thank you very much for your interview.
It's been great for me to be able to talk about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.